That night, as thunder rolled over the hills of Extremadura, I packed a single bag and walked out into the downpour, my heart pounding louder than the lightning cracking the sky. Little did I know that abandonment would echo through every choice I made, carving a path from heartbreak to a stage where the woman who'd birthed me would have no choice but to witness the life she tried to erase. By dawn, I'd hitched a ride to Seville, the ancient city's labyrinth of narrow streets swallowing me whole like a secret it had been keeping for centuries. Extremadura's rugged plains felt too much like home, too raw, too unforgiving, so I needed the pulse of something bigger, something that hummed with flamenco guitars and the scent of orange blossoms masking the ache. I crashed on a friend's couch in Triana, the gypsy quarter where laundry fluttered like flags of surrender between wrought iron balconies. Her name was Sophia, a painter with ink-stained fingers and a laugh that could cut through fog, who'd studied abroad in New York and brought back stories of subways and skyscrapers that made my American roots twitch under my skin. I was Emerson Hale, daughter of a Texan oilman's daughter who'd married a Spanish vineyard owner after a whirlwind romance in the 80s. Mom, Lillian, had traded dusty boots for espadrilles, but she'd never shaken that Lone Star steel, the kind that built empires and broke spirits without apology. Dad died when I was 10, leaving her the finca and a vineyard that barely turned a profit, but she ran it like it was her kingdom, all sharp commands and sun-leathered hands. Coming out to her had been my rebellion against that isolation, but it backfired spectacularly. "You're throwing away everything I fought for," she'd spat, her blue eyes like chips of ice. And then she was gone, not to another country, but to a cousin's place in Madrid, cutting me off from the only world I'd known. Sophia's apartment was a riot of color, canvases leaning against walls, half-finished portraits of flamenco dancers with eyes like smoldering coals. "Stay as long as you need, she said, handing me a mug of thick hot chocolate spiked with brandy. "Seville eats loneliness for breakfast." I nodded, forcing a smile, but inside, I was a hollowed-out gourd, the kind they carve into lanterns for All Saints' Day. Days blurred into weeks. I waitressed at a tapas bar near the Alcazar, dodging tourists with their fanny packs and broken Spanish, pocketing tips to fund sketches in my notebook, dreamy lines of women with windswept hair, their faces blurred but their touches electric. It was on a sweltering August evening, during the Feria de Abril's hangover of street parties, that I first saw Willow. The feria had spilled into summer, makeshift tents popping up like wildflowers along the Guadalquivir River, lanterns swaying in the breeze carrying the sizzle of churros and the wail of Conte Jondo. I was wiping down tables at the bar when she walked in, a vision in a simple white sundress that hugged her like a lover's whisper, her black hair cascading in loose waves down her back, olive skin glowing under the string lights. She was 30, maybe, with dark brown eyes that held the depth of ancient wells, and a smile that curved like the crescent moon over the Sierra Morena. She ordered a tinto de verano, her American accent slipping through the Spanish like honey, Californian, I guessed, from the easy lilt. "Make it strong," she said to the bartender, then turned to me, those eyes locking on like spotlights. "You look like you could use one too." I laughed, a real one for the first time in months, and slid onto the stool beside her during my break. "Willow Reyes," she introduced herself, a photographer who'd left LA for Seville 2 years back, chasing light and stories in the shadows of cathedrals. "Spain's got this magic," she said, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "It strips you down to your bones, makes you rebuild from the heart." We talked until the bar emptied, the conversation flowing like the river outside, about the ache of leaving home, the thrill of reinvention. She showed me photos on her phone, golden hour shots of flamenco dancers mid-spin, their skirts flaring like flames, quiet portraits of elderly women in black lace, eyes crinkled with secrets. "I capture what people hide," she murmured, and I felt seen, truly seen, for the first time since Mom's door slam. When the clock struck 2, she walked me to Sophia's, our shoulders brushing, the air thick with unspoken possibility. At the door, she leaned in, her breath warm against my cheek. "Come shoot with me tomorrow. The cathedral at sunrise." I said yes, and just like that, the storm inside me began to break. Sunrise over the Giralda Tower painted the world in pinks and golds, the minaret spire piercing the sky like a promise. Willow handed me her spare camera, a beat-up Nikon that felt like an extension of her hand, worn leather strap, lens cap etched with tiny hearts. "Just point and feel," she instructed, her voice low as we climbed the rooftop of an abandoned building Sophia knew about, overlooking the labyrinthine alleys. I fumbled at first, my shots blurry with nerves, but Willow was patient, her hand steadying mine, her laugh a soft ripple when I cursed under my breath. "You're a natural," she said later, as we sprawled on a blanket in Maria Luisa Park, reviewing the photos over café con leche from a thermos. The gardens hummed with cicadas, peacocks strutting like royalty among the palm fronds. My favorites were the candid ones she'd snuck of me, wind tousling my auburn hair, freckles standing out against the dawn light, green eyes wide with wonder. "That's how you look when you're free," she whispered, and something shifted, a spark igniting in the space between us. We fell into a rhythm after that. Mornings shooting in the Barrio Santa Cruz, where whitewashed walls hid patios bursting with bougainvillea, afternoons wandering the Triana market, haggling over figs and almonds, her fingers brushing mine as we shared bites. Willow opened up slowly, like a flower under hesitant sun. Born to Mexican-American parents in Echo Park, she'd grown up dodging expectations, become a doctor, marry well, give them grandkids. Photography was her escape, but coming out at 25 had fractured her family. Her father stopped speaking to her, her mother sent Bible verses via text. "I came here to heal," she confessed one evening, as we sat on the Puente de Isabel II, feet dangling over the river's lazy flow. "But mostly, to forget how it feels to be invisible." I told her about Mom then, the words tumbling out like river stones, the Finca's dusty vineyards, Dad's ghost in every sunset, the way Lillian's abandonment had left me adrift. "She didn't just leave, she erased me," I said, voice cracking. Willow pulled me close, her arms a harbor, and for the first time, I let myself cry without apology. "You're not erased, she murmured into my hair. "You're etched in every light I chase." Our first kiss happened under a canopy of stars at the Alcazar, during a midnight concert of classical guitar. The music swelled, Segovia's tremolo weaving through the air like silk, and as the final note faded, she cupped my face, her thumbs tracing my jaw. Her lips were soft, tasting of sangria and salt, and the world narrowed to the press of her body against mine, the distant strum of strings echoing our heartbeats. It wasn't fireworks, it was a quiet anchoring, the kind that makes you believe in forever. But Seville, for all its romance, had teeth. Willow's visa was expiring in 6 months, her savings dwindling from freelance gigs for travel mags. I was scraping by on tips and odd jobs, dreaming of turning my sketches into something real, a graphic novel about lost daughters and found homes. Sophia warned us over paella one night, "Love's easy here, but life? It bites like a rabid dog." We laughed it off, but doubt crept in like fog off the Atlantic. Enter Elena, Willow's old friend from LA, who blew into town like a Sirocco wind. Tall and angular, with a pixie-cut dyed electric blue and tattoos snaking up her arms, Elena was a filmmaker chasing a documentary on Andalusian witches. She'd crashed at Willow's tiny apartment in the Macarena district, a sun-drenched space cluttered with film reels and drying herbs, turning our lazy Sundays into chaotic brainstorming sessions. "You two are adorable," she'd tease, pouring us glasses of manzanilla sherry. "But babe, Willow's always been a flight risk. Don't clip her wings." I brushed it off as jealousy, but Elena's story sowed seeds, Willow's wild college days, parties in the Hollywood Hills where she'd vanish for weeks, an ex-girlfriend back in Cali who'd called her a beautiful ghost. Willow rolled her eyes, pulling me closer during movie nights, but I started noticing the late-night texts lighting up her phone, the way her gaze drifted when Elena whispered about one last big project at Stateside. Fall deepened, leaves turning the parks to fire, and we threw ourselves into a ritual, weekly picnics by the river, where I'd read her passages from my notebook, tales of a girl rebuilding her heart from shattered tile mosaics, and she'd capture me in Polaroids, tacking them to her wall like talismans. "This is us," she'd say, pointing to a shot of our hands intertwined, shadows long in the afternoon sun. Unbreakable. Yet cracks formed. Mom reached out once, a curt email from Madrid, Heard you're whoring around Seville. Come home before you ruin yourself. I deleted it, but it lingered like smoke. Willow held me through the sobs, promising, we're building our own home, brick by brick. By November, Elena's film was wrapping, and she dropped the bomb, a grant for a sequel in California, needing Willow as cinematographer. It's your big break, Elena urged over tapas, her blue eyes gleaming. Willow hesitated, glancing at me across the table, but I saw the pull, the dream she'd buried under our quiet life. What if we go together, she suggested later, in bed, her fingers tracing patterns on my back. You could illustrate the film, we'd make art side by side. The idea thrilled and terrified me. Leave Seville. The city that had stitched my wounds. But for her, I'd try. We spent days planning, visas, portfolios, a shared studio in Silver Lake. It felt like destiny, until the betrayal hit like a gut punch. I found the letter tucked in Willow's camera bag, while helping pack for a scouting trip to Cordoba. It was from Elena, dated a week prior. Will, I can't keep pretending. That night in LA, before you left. It wasn't just friendship for me. Come back. We could be epic. Forget the graphic designer, she's sweet, but she's not fire. My stomach roiled, visions flashing, stolen glances, Elena's hand lingering on Willow's arm. Had our love been a detour, a pretty pause? I confronted her that night in the apartment, the letter trembling in my fist. Is this why you're hesitating? Because she's been waiting. Willow's face crumpled, denial spilling out like wine from a tipped glass. No, Elena's confused. It was one kiss, years ago, nothing more. But the hurt was a chasm, widening with every word. I chose you, she pleaded, reaching for me, but I recoiled, the echo of Mom's rejection amplifying every doubt. We fought through the night, words like daggers, accusations flying, my insecurities, her unspoken ambitions. By dawn, I stormed out, wandering the empty streets until the cathedral bells tolled 5. Sophia found me on her stoop, soaked from a sudden shower, and pulled me inside. Love isn't a straight path, chica, she said, wrapping me in a blanket. But running. That guarantees you'll never arrive. Winter wrapped Seville in a rare chill, the Guadalquivir misting like breath on glass, and I buried myself in work, double shifts at the bar, nights hunched over my sketches until my eyes burned. Willow called, texted, showed up at the market with armfuls of jasmine, but I kept my distance, the betrayal festering like an untreated wound. Elena left for Madrid, her farewell party a blur I'd skipped, but whispers reached me, Willow had turned down the California gig, staying to fight for us. Guilt gnawed at me. Was I punishing her for a ghost, or protecting the fragile home we'd built? Sophia dragged me to a therapy group in the basement of a Jesuit church, expats and locals sharing stories of fractured families, the room smelling of incense and instant coffee. There, amid nods and Kleenex, I voiced the unspeakable. My mom left because she couldn't love the real me. What if Willow does the same? The circle held space, a Spanish abuelita with rosary beads patting my knee. Hija, love isn't perfection. It's showing up, scars and all. Spring thawed the frost between us. Willow cornered me after a shift, her eyes shadowed from sleepless nights, a bouquet of wild poppies thrust forward like a white flag. I booked us a weekend in Ronda, she said, voice steady despite the tremble. No phones, no past. Just us, and the bridge over the gorge. I wanted to say no, to shield my heart, but the poppy's red petals mirrored the fire she'd reignited in me. We drove west in her battered Renault, the road climbing into the Sierra de Grazalema, cork oaks twisting like dancers frozen mid-step. Ronda was a dream carved from cliffs, the Puente Nuevo spanning a yawning chasm, mist rising from the Guadalquivir River far below. We stayed in a posada with views of the infinite drop, white linens crisp against wooden beams, the air scented with thyme and pine. That first night, over a dinner of roast lamb and local Ribera wine, Willow laid it bare. Elena's letter was a desperate grab. I told her no, months ago. You're my horizon, the one I chase every dawn. Tears mixed with the vino tinto as I confessed my fears, the echo of Mom's abandonment making every shadow loom large. We made love under the stars on the terrace, not urgent, but slow, reverent, hands mapping forgiveness like cartographers. In the morning, we hiked the gorge's edge, her camera clicking as I sketched the vertigo of it all, the thrill of standing firm against the void. This is us, I said, echoing her words from before. Teetering, but together. Back in Seville, we rebuilt stronger. Willow landed a gig shooting for a tourism board, her portfolio blooming with our shared visions, intimate portraits of queer couples in hidden patios, their love defiant against stone walls. I finished the first chapters of my graphic novel, Hechis del Olivo, illustrations of a girl piecing herself from vineyard vines, finding love in the soil. We hosted dinners with Sophia and her eclectic crew, poets, musicians, a trans barista with a voice like velvet, nights filled with laughter and lute strings, the apartment alive with possibility. But fate, that capricious Andalusian, had one more twist. A letter arrived from Madrid, postmarked with Mom's old florid script. I'm ill, it read, terse as ever. Cancer. Doctors say months. The fink is yours if you want it. Lillian. No apology, no warmth, just coordinates on a map, a tether yanked from the grave. I stared at the envelope for days, Willow's hand on my shoulder a constant anchor. You don't owe her your pain, she said softly. But the pull was magnetic, the land of my childhood, the ghosts I'd fled. We drove to Extremadura under a sky bruised with clouds, the vineyard emerging like a memory, rows of gnarled vines heavy with unripe grapes, the Finca's stucco walls cracked but standing. Mom was a shadow of herself, frail in a chenille robe, silver streaks threading her blonde hair like fault lines. The chemo had hollowed her cheeks, but those blue eyes, sharp as ever, fixed on me with a mix of defiance and desperation. Willow hung back in the kitchen, brewing café solo, giving us space. You came, Mom rasped, from her armchair by the hearth. Thought you'd let me rot. Words I'd rehearsed dissolved. I almost did, I admitted, sinking onto the ottoman. You left me first. Like I was a mistake to erase. She flinched, gaze dropping to her knotted hands. The silence stretched, broken only by the tick of the grandfather clock Dad had wound religiously. Finally, she whispered, I was scared, Emerson. Your father. He knew, before he died. Said you'd be brave, love fierce. I couldn't face it. Thought if I ran, it'd go away. Her confession cracked something in me, not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. We talked haltingly over the next days, me staying in my old room, Willow charming the local baker for fresh pan de pueblo. Mom shared stories I'd never heard, her Texas girlhood, wild rides on quarter horses, the whirlwind with Dad at a bullfight in Pamplona. I built walls to survive, she said one evening, as we walked the vines, Willow trailing with her camera. But they trapped me too. Willow captured it all, the tentative thaw, Mom's hand on my arm, the vineyard's golden light forgiving our fractures. This is healing, Willow murmured that night, as we lay in the creaking bed, stars visible through the unshuttered window. But Mom's illness marched on, her strength ebbing like the tide. In her lucid moments, she'd grill Willow, you make her happy. No running when it gets hard. Willow met her gaze steadily. Never. She's my north. By summer, Mom rallied enough for a trip back to Seville, not for treatment, but for a whim she'd voiced in delirium, see that city you love. Dance on its stages. It was her olive branch, jagged but real. We arranged it, Willow scouting venues, me sketching feverishly. The idea crystallized during a flamenco show at Los Galos, the raw emotion, the foot-stomping defiance. What if we marry there? Willow proposed, on bended knee in the courtyard, a ring forged from twisted olive wood glinting in her palm. On stage, under lights, for all the world, and her, to see. I said yes through tears, the yes that mends worlds. Planning the wedding became our rebellion, a tapestry woven from Seville's soul and our scarred hearts. We chose the Teatro de la Maestranza, not for grandeur, but for its riverside intimacy, the auditorium's red velvet seats echoing with operas past, the stage a wooden heart where stories bled true. No white carriage or cathedral pomp, instead, a ceremony blending American whimsy with Spanish fire, vows exchanged to the strum of a lone guitarist, guests in summer linens, tables laden with gazpacho and pecan pie flown from Texas kin who'd RSVP'd despite the distance. Mom's health dipped, but she insisted on coming, propped in a wheelchair. Willow pushed with gentle humor. "If I'm dying, let me go out with flair," she'd quip, her blue eyes twinkling under the wig she'd taken to wearing, a blonde bob that softened her edges. We flew her down. The private nurse Sophia recommended fussing over 4 drips in the finca's guest room before the journey. In Seville, she marveled at the changes, the high-speed train zipping to Córdoba, the rainbow flags fluttering from Triana balconies during Pride. "Your world's brighter than mine," she admitted one afternoon, as we sipped horchata in the Plaza de España's tiled alcoves. "I dimmed it, didn't I?" "Forgiveness isn't erasure," I replied, squeezing her hand, the gesture foreign but fitting. Willow, ever the bridge, shared her Polaroids, us at 22, awkward and hopeful, now, at 30, etched with lines of laughter. Mom traced one of Willow's, a close-up of her dark eyes, fierce and tender. "You see her," she said. "Really see." Invites went out to a mosaic of souls, Sophia and her artist collective, Willow's cousin from LA, who'd thawed the family ice, a handful of my vineyard cousins, wary but curious, even Elena, who arrived solo with a contrite letter and a vintage Hasselblad as peace offering. I was wrong, she told me privately, over rebujitos at a rehearsal dinner. "Willow's light is yours. Don't let my shadow steal it." I nodded, the old hurt dissolving like sugar in sweet sherry. The week before, rehearsals turned chaotic, guitarist tuning mid-vow, flower deliveries overwhelming the green room. Mom, surprisingly, took charge of the playlist, insisting on a mix of Patsy Cline's Heartache and Rosalia's Raw Power. "Balance the soul," she'd say, her voice gaining strength from the purpose. Willow and I stole moments in the wings, a kiss backstage, her hands in my hair, sketches of her in my gown, lace whispering against the floorboards. "This is our stage," she'd whisper. "No exits, only encores." The day arrived under a flawless July sky, the river glittering like shattered diamonds. Guests milled in the foyer, 50 strong, a tapestry of accents and embraces, while Willow and I prepped in adjacent dressing rooms. Sophia zipped my gown, a custom piece from a Triana seamstress, ivory silk with embroidered vines climbing the bodice, evoking the finca's resilience. "You look like a queen," she teased, pinning my auburn waves with fresh laurel. Across the hall, I glimpsed Willow through the cracked door, her cream suit tailored sharp, red rose boutonniere a nod to the poppies of Rhonda, black hair braided with silk threads. Mom wheeled and then, elegant in navy silk, her silver hair swept into a chignon. "Emerson," she breathed, eyes welling as she clasped my hands. "My girl. You've grown roots I couldn't imagine." The words hung, heavy with the unsaid, pride, regret, a mother's belated bloom. Willow joined us, the 3 of us a tableau, past, present, future colliding softly. "Take care of each other," Mom said, pressing a vintage locket into my palm, Dad's, with a faded photo of us 3 at the vineyard, grapes staining our cheeks. The house lights dimmed, the guitarist's fingers dancing over strings in a haunting rondeo. I walked the aisle alone, the stage lights warm on my skin, guests rising like a wave. Willow waited center stage, her smile a beacon, dark eyes locking mine as I took my place. We faced each other under the arch, wildflowers and linen swaying gently, and the officiant, a queer rabbi from Barcelona with a voice like aged oak, began. Vows poured out, unscripted and raw. "Willow," I started, voice steady despite the tremor, "you found me in the ruins and built me a cathedral. I promise to be your light in the dark rooms, your anchor in the edit." She laughed through tears, replying, "Emerson, you're my favorite frame, the one I return to, again and again." I'll chase your story, frame by frame, till our last exposure. Rings slid on, gold bands etched with olive leaves, and as we kissed, slow and sealing, the auditorium erupted, applause thundering, Sophia whooping from the front row. But my eyes sought Mom, seated prime orchestra, her hands clasped white-knuckled, tears carving paths down her cheeks. She didn't applaud at first, frozen, as if the sight pinned her soul, but then, slowly, her palms met, the sound a quiet thunder of her own. Willow caught it, squeezing my hand. She sees us. The reception spilled onto the riverfront terrace, tables groaning under jamon iberico and vegan paella, lanterns flickering like fireflies. Mom held court from her chair, charming Willow's cousin with tales of Texas two-steps, even swaying to a guest's impromptu guitar solo. Elena snapped candids, redemption in her lens. Sophia led a conga line snaking through potted orange trees. As dusk fell, Willow and I slipped away to the bridge, the city lights mirroring stars on the water. She watched, I whispered, head on her shoulder. All of it. Willow kissed my temple. And she stayed. That's the real vow. Months later, Mom slipped away in the finca's sunroom, vines framing the window like a benediction. We buried her under the oldest olive tree, the one Dad planted on their wedding day, roots deep, branches wide. I inherited the land, not as burden, but legacy, a place to host workshops for queer artists, Willow teaching photography, me leading illustration circles. Sophia dubbed it Keege's Haven, a sanctuary where stories like ours could root without fear. Willow and I settled into a rhythm, mornings shooting sunrises over the Sierra, afternoons tangled in sketches and scripts. Her California dreams morphed. We collaborated on a docu-series, Bridges of Belonging, profiling LGBTQ+ expats in Spain, Elena producing from afar. Mom's locket became my talisman, a reminder that love, even fractured, endures. On our first anniversary, we returned to the Mestranza stage, empty now, but ours. The guitarist played our song, and under the ghost lights, we danced, slow, imperfect, alive. To the women who leave, Willow toasted with imaginary wine, and the ones who return. I laughed, pulling her close. To the stages we claim. In the end, it wasn't erasure or perfection that defined us, but the messy grace of showing up, scars bared, hearts open, to the life we'd scripted together. Seville whispered its approval through the breeze, the river carrying our vows onward, eternal as the stars above Extremadura's hills.